morning, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Expert Facebook weekly edition. My name is Kathleen McGuinness. I'm Director of Community Relations for SmithLife Homecare, and I'm here with my honored guest, Joan Lewis, who I will introduce in a little more depth in just a moment. SmithLife Homecare's Ask the Expert series focuses on providing valuable information and resources to our community, especially those aging solo at home. We are excited to discuss the many ways that Joan Lewis and Friendship Heights Neighbors Network is providing older adults with support and resources. Now, we want to introduce and welcome our honored guest today, Joan Lewis, who is also a friend of mine. She lives in Friendship Heights, and she has an amazing product that she's going to tell us about today. So, Joan, we'll start with thank you so much for making time to join us this morning. I really appreciate it.
I'm honored to be here, Kathleen. It's a joy.
Well, thank you. So can you tell our viewing audience a little bit about yourself and about your background?
Yes, I've lived in Friendship Heights now for 36 years. I've retired after 39 years of working with children from infancy through young adulthood who had special needs. So I have the kind of brain that creates lists all by itself. It seems to organize things for me and all the people around me. And in my world, I ended up after retirement with my boyfriend who had some serious medical issues. And I went to a yarn shop in his community and picked up knitting needles after having not used them for 30 years. And I found it to be a huge stress reliever. So I became the knitting queen. I was knitting everything I could figure out to knit. And then as life continued, 6 months later, my mother had some health issues and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I was able to maintain both people 150 miles apart as the main caregiver for them. And as I'm going through my life of lists and knitting, my mother lost the ability to communicate. So she was in an assisted living facility, and I would bring my knitting, and I watched her eyes as she was looking at me knitting. And I made the decision to bring in complicated projects with lots of color. And she would engage and reach for the yarn and cuddle the yarn and hold the yarn. And in some ways, almost seemed like she was communicating with it. And so I made the decision to make a blanket with her using rainbow colors and predictable patterns. And so what I would do is pretend like I didn't know what to do when she would hand me the color or take the color that I was done using. And we really started communicating that way. And she lived in assisted living for a year and a half, and we knitted 4 blankets. And that knitting joy was a treasure to me. That is a memory I will always hold dear. So put that on one side of the room. About a year ago, during the pandemic, the phone rang and a friend said to me, Montgomery Hospice wants us to make Twiddle Muffs. And I said, what everyone I've ever met says, what is a Twiddle Muff? So I did some research and I put a PowerPoint together. And in the process of putting that together, that's teacher Joan working on that one. In the process of putting that together, we put out a communication, the Friendship Heights Neighbors Network put out some communication for donated yarn. And what happens when you get donated yarn is people buy yarn and they use beautiful, luscious, yummy yarn. The donated yarn is what they didn't use. So it is rarely beautiful. It is rarely colorful. I will tell you later about making a Twiddle Muff, but one of the joys of Twiddle Muffs, and here is one to look at. One of the joys of Twiddle Muffs is you're putting two strands of yarn together. So here's one I made using some particularly less than stellar colors, but together, I think it looks rather joyous.
Looks great.
So
And the different textures looks great too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So a Twiddle Muff, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. I'm so sorry, but it just bubbles in me. I get so excited showing them when people are interested. A Twiddle Muff is basically, if you remember the Victorian muffs people wore when they kept their hands warm.
Right.
Same thought. It's a tunnel. It's a yarn tunnel. It doesn't have to be knitted. In fact, my friend that does a lot of crochet added a crochet feature here. You could put your fingers through it as a twiddle factor. So you take this tunnel and then you embellish it with features that make it something you want to touch all the time. And thus we say, or the Brits will say, you twiddle or fiddle. So when you Google this, you might see them called fiddle muffs or twiddle muffs. And this has just been such a joy. So we got a ton of donated yarn. I mean, more than we ever imagined. There were baskets left all over. I still have a voluminous amount of yarn. So the Friendship Heights Neighbors Network coordinated the yarn donation, and then we coordinated with 3 different groups. The Friday Fiber Friends is the yarn group or the knitting group that I started that we have at our local community center.
And what time is that, Joan? If somebody wanted to join?
Oh, absolutely. We meet at the Friendship Heights Village Center on Fridays from 1 to 2:30. And I mean every Friday. We are so devoted. We crawl through the snow, we come in the rain, and we giggle. We knit, we crochet, we have basket weavers, we have anybody that enjoys fiber, the sense of community, and the sense of charity.
Great.
Because our Twiddle Muff project is our charity project.
Right. So you mentioned 3 organizations. So
Yeah.
Friendship Heights, who are the other 2?
Friendship Heights, and Friendship Heights sponsors a group called Crafts and Chat. And Crafts and Chat is a unique group. It is a group that's comprised primarily of quilters. And the quilters said to me, we're very excited with your project. However, we don't know how to knit. And so I put the factory process together in my mind and thought, great, you can be the embellishers. So that's when my factory process started. The Friday Fiber Friends make unembellished Twiddle Muffs, meaning the knitted tubes or the crocheted tubes. I belong to a county-wide knitting organization called the Creative Knitters Guild. They meet at the Kensington Library on the first Saturday of the month from 1:30 to 3:30, and you're welcome to join us anytime there. And they also knit the tubes, the tunnels, the blank Twiddle Muffs. And so I collect them and I take them on a last Thursday of the month when the Crafts and Chat group meets at Willard Towers from 3 to 5. I take it to them and they will embellish. Great. There is this incredible woman who lives and participates in that group. She's 92 and she makes all of the crocheted flowers.
Wow, bless her heart.
She makes boxes of these crocheted flowers and then people embellish them on the Twiddle Muffs.
Excellent. Joan, so we have about 5 minutes left, and I have a few questions for our audience I'd like to ask you. So you mentioned the different programs who have benefited, or did you? Who
No,
has?
I'd like to tell you about that.
Okay,
Montgomery Hospice got the first donation, and that was 25 Twiddle Muffs, and they requested them. The second group, and we had to research to find people who wanted these. So I'm reaching out to the community that's viewing this in hopes that if you want some, you will ask for them as well. The second group we located was JESA, the Jewish Social Service Agency Hospice. They got 20 Twiddle Muffs. The third agency is called Caring Gaithersburg, and that's an all-volunteer organization. They took the Twiddle Muffs the weekend before Hanukkah and Christmas and distributed them to the memory care unit over in Asbury.
oh, that's great. We're going to Asbury Monday.
Oh, wonderful. And next Friday, Holy Cross, I think it's called Home Care and Hospice. They have requested unembellished Twiddle Muffs.
Right.
And they're coming to pick them up from the Friday Fiber Friends.
Okay, so this is such a wonderful project. And I'm assuming people request the unembellished ones for those with advanced dementia, so nobody puts buttons in their mouths, etc., things like that, right?
Correct.
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
you know what? I forgot to mention, Kathleen, the other thing, the reason for Twiddle Muffs and the reason that the healthcare agencies are requesting these is there are patients who have maybe PICC lines or IV lines and need to keep their hands busy and away from certain things. They might even do self-injurious kinds of things. I've learned through this process that there's a state of agitation in the hospice process that really finds Twiddle Muffs to be calming and helpful also.
Yes, I definitely think I need to get one for Renan. Okay, so 2 more questions to ask you. So if an organization wants to obtain a few for their seniors, memory care, wherever they may be, so we're going to throw up a slide at the end of this program. Is that how they would obtain them? They would reach out to you?
They would reach out through FHNN, Friendship Heights Neighbors Network, and they'll get in touch with me.
Okay, great. And I would also like to mention that Friendship Heights Neighbors Network, our local village here, that Joan also contributes her volunteer time as a board of directors member. So you really are a pillar of the community. So let's see. So we've covered what is a Twiddle Muff and how do you make it. Have we covered how does the Friendship Heights Neighbors Network Twiddle Muff project work? I think we have.
Well, the Creative Knitters Guild and the Friday Fiber Friends are our knitters. And then the Craft and Chat, sponsored by FHNN, are the embellishers. And then I am Twiddle Muff Central. I contact groups that to explain about Twiddle Muffs. Many know what Twiddle Muffs are, but we need to spread the word because there's no demand until you find out what it is.
Right, right. You've just made me think of a big demand at one of our locations on campus. So I'll talk to you about that offline.
Wonderful.
And oops, let's see, end the timer. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you sharing your Twiddle Muffs with us. They really are such a thoughtful and creative gift and calming product that it's very unique. So we're going to put up a slide for our audience in just a moment as we end this presentation. And you'll be able to find out how to get in touch with Friendship Heights Neighbors Network, and they will in turn get in touch with Joan regarding Twiddle Muffs for your organization. So I'd like to thank Joan and our viewing audience for tuning in today to this week's edition of SmithLife Homecare Ask the Expert. I'd also like to remind our viewers in Friendship Heights that we do have a special pilot program here that is available for our seniors aging in place in this community. It's uniquely available for only 2 hours at a time. It's $28.95 per hour, and we think this is affordable. If you happen to be a member of Friendship Heights Neighbors Network, your first hour of service is free. Please give us a call at 301-816-5020, and any of our team members will be happy to help you. Again, thank you for tuning in today. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.